Hey guys, just a quick note before we begin that the show may contain spoilers and adult language, but that's just because we know how to have a good time. Stick around, you'll be glad you did.
You are here for me to enlighten you.
You ever act like this again, you're barred for life.
It's just vile and base.
It's kind of embarrassing.
If you know your lines, then you can forget them.
Oh, I get it. It's very clever.
Ho, 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 peoples, and welcome back to another episode of Esoterica Cinema, the podcast where we take films from the cinematic multiverse and discuss the hell out of them. I am the holly jolly Ryan Siebold, and with me today is the man who Santa Claus himself has banned for life from celebrating the holidays. Everyone leave some milk and cookies out for Mr. Jason Peters!
What's up, Ryan? How's it going, my friend?
It's going pretty good, buddy. How you been?
Man, I was doing fine, and then the whole thing with Saint Nick went down, and it's just, man, I'm telling you, like, I've been really bummed out about it, because it was a total misunderstanding, you know, like...
Yeah, it's got to be a hard time of year for you.
Yeah, it really is, man, because you know what, here's the thing, so, like, I love Christmas, okay, and I really wanted to show my appreciation to the Claus family as a whole. So my wife is actually a really good knitter, and I had her knit a sweater for Mr. and Mrs. Claus. So, you know, on the way over there, I was bringing, I had it like strapped to my back. It had caught on some trees, right? Some shrubbery. It was kind of torn up a little bit, the sweater for Mrs. Claus, that is. So when I got there, I presented it to him, asked her to put it on, and let's just say that it had kind of a Barbarella thing going on, right? It was a little ragged, and it was actually super sexy, right? But I wouldn't dare say that in front of Mr. Claus. Anyways, he comes out, he sees the two of us, he sees her like stripping down. It was a complete misunderstanding. He thought that I was trying to hit on his wife. And again, dude, I mean, it's like, first of all, look, no disrespect, but she's like 463 years old, and that's just not my bag, firstly, right? Like, second of all, I would never do anything to disrespect Mr. Claus. That man has been hooking me up since I was like a little baby with some cool shit on the reg every year. I wouldn't dare disrespect someone like that. But yeah, so now I'm on his shit list. And here's the thing. It's a literal shit list, okay? People think that you get coal in your stocking. Negative. Every year, huge mound of fecal matter in my stocking.
Oh, wow. Is it reindeer shit or elf shit? It's got to be one of the two.
Well, it has sparkles in it. But I don't know
shit.
that. I was going to say, because I don't know that narrows
elf
it down.
Shit all the way.
Oh, yeah. I'll admit, I'm not hugely learned on the differences between reindeer shit and elf shit. But yeah, man, it just sucks, dude. Like, I love that guy. I love the presents. Now I just get shit every year.
Yeah, you got caught unwrapping the wrong gift, buddy, trying to show off the old North Pole.
And here's the thing, dude. Like, I thought it was cool, right? Because so silly me, I'm the only person, apparently, that didn't realize that I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus was about a dad who dresses up as Santa Claus and their kid catches them, and that's the whole thing. That's why Mommy's kissing Santa Claus, because Daddy's dressing up. I always took that carol literally. I thought that, like, it was just kind of a thing, like, hey, Santa Claus leaves presents for the kids, and oh, by the way, he's gonna cuck your wife. Like, that's the trade-off, You know what I mean? Like, and that's cool for me as a kid. Like, what do I care, right? Like, I'm getting presents on the reg, dude. So, I was really just sort of shocked.
You have to give up Mom Dukes to Santa Claus.
Well, yeah, so that's what I thought. And so that's why I was, like, even more shocked that he was, like, so bent out of shape about it, even if it was a misunderstanding, because I thought that was just something that happened. And then
they were in an open relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I find out that it's
an understood thing. Santa Claus is the one who put the satin on your panties. He gets around like Tupac.
Yeah, dude. And so it turns out that it's just my dumbass, misinterpreting the lyrics to this song the whole time. And man, it's just, you're left with egg on your face and shit in your stocking. Sucks,
or
man.
Eggnog on your face, as the case may be, right?
Yeah, or so he says it's eggnog, but it tastes a little salty.
Oh man, well, dude, I got nothing for you on that. It must be really tough being banned from the holidays as a whole. I mean, your wife's, Jewish, obviously. You can't celebrate Hanukkah. You just gotta nothing for this guy. No Kwanzaa bot.
Yeah, just wholesale banned from the holidays. So, but it's cool because now I just make like a fuck ton of cookies and give them to my friends, and none for old Santa Claus. So, you're missing out too, bitch. Yeah, that's what's up. Get at me, Santa.
Oh man, and rough times. Well, we'll all light a candle for you on the old menorah for Jason, in memory of Jason's holiday experience. Jason, we have a movie to discuss.
Yes, we do.
Looking at 2005-2006's Cash by
sir.
Michael Haneke. Jason, why don't you break us down what Cash is all about?
All right, man. From Google. Without warning, happy, successful Parisian couple George, played by Daniel Atelier, and Anne Laurent, played by Juliette Binoche, the lovely Juliette Binoche, receive anonymous videos suggesting that they are being stalked. The tapes are followed by disturbingly violent, if childish, drawings. George, a well-known literary talk show host, shrugs off the mysterious messages, but Anna grows increasingly distressed and fearful for their teenage son. She grows to suspect an incident in George's past is behind the increasing torment. Ryan, what did you think about this movie?
Jason, this is normally where we'd play a trailer, and I'd say I'd love to tell you, and we'll come back after this trailer. However, since this movie is in French, we are at another impasse of a foreign film wherein we have no trailer and no clips, so the listeners are stuck listening to just you and I for the entirety of this show.
Always
apologies in advance.
Yeah.
So, this is we're just gonna have to plow through this one. This was a mixed bag. I had mixed feelings about this one.
Okay.
I'm really, really curious as to very few notes, but I have a lot to say about it.
Interesting.
Really curious what your take on it was. So I'm going to toss it back to you. And as always, say, Jason, what did you think about this movie?
Well, I suppose we'll have to go ahead and get into it here. But Ryan, first, I'm going to need you to let me know where we should start.
This is a nice volley. I like this. We're starting at the beginning.
At the beginning, indeed. So when we open, we've actually got something of an awkward frame as credits roll over an image of a typical suburban neighborhood. The camera's positioned across the street from an apartment complex and in between two other complexes, the walls of which create a claustrophobic feel on either side of the frame. Now, sedans and healthy shrubs litter the street, while the top of a car and a motorcycle are cut off at the bottom of the frame. Everything comes together to give it a 4:3 feel, though it isn't, and for almost the entire shot we also hear very little going on, save for that of birds chirping, until the off-screen voices interrupt that. It's both a man and a woman. They interrupt the silence. Now, Ryan, when the voices chime in, the man is basically asking, like, where did you find this? She responds, a plastic bag on the porch. We don't exactly know what it is yet, and that's going to kind of be a theme where there's certain things talked about that are slowly revealed over the course of the film. The man, the protagonist, goes out into the street. He's obviously sort of paranoid that someone is watching him or something like that. He's looking for someone or something, but he can't find them. And he goes back into the house. Now, Ryan, here's the first thing I will say, okay? Which is that, 3 to 5 minutes into this film, one of the great reveals of all time, okay? And maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic, but I absolutely loved the reveal because, like I said, I thought that this opening shot of just this apartment complex, it was really busy. It wasn't necessarily artistically framed. It was a really awkward shot, and it was interesting because I know Haneke's reputation as a very sort of esteemed filmmaker, and I thought it was a really just sort of, again, it wasn't even ugly. It was just very sort of like a mediocre shot that someone would do. So when all of a sudden we see the static lines of him fast forwarding on that frame, and then all of a sudden we realize that they're watching a video of that, I loved that because I did not see that coming. It was an honest, legitimate surprise. Did you have any reaction to that the same for you, or was it not really the same?
No, same. There's a lot of twists and turns in this film, obviously, where they kind of pull you out of it and pull you back into it. So real quick, this was filmed in 2005, which is an awkward time for cinema. What?
No. I'm sorry. I think you're. Now that you said an awkward time for cinema, I think you're about to go into maybe digital photography. I thought you were going to say it's a weird time for them to lean so heavy into VCRs. Because it's like VCRs and cassettes in like 06. It was like, I think we were past that. Because I think I got a DVD player in junior high, and that I was like graduated college. Well, not that I actually like graduated, just letting you guys know, but I was done with college by then, let's say.
Yeah, but I mean, DVDs weren't so accessible that you would film things on them for district, like to give out, like for surveillance.
Well, but you also weren't using like giant whatever millimeter those old school VHSs. You're on the mini DVs at that point.
Yeah, well, and this is where I'm going with this, right? And the meta thing about all of it is that it's, even as filmmakers, it was awkward because digital hadn't quite crossed the threshold to be a cinematic norm as we know it now. But film, it was much more affordable than film for indie cinema. So you could go make something like this. But it still had its limitations. And I think this film was rife with those limitations from the cinematography standpoint.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that said, my initial take was, what am I watching? Because it had a very digital, like early 2000s digital look to it. Now, my eyes had to adjust. It's like walking outside after you've been inside all day and your eyes kind of adjust to the sun. Like I just had to adjust to that digital look for a second. But when I saw the static and everything, I was like, oh, okay, we're watching a surveillance tape. And then we pull back to the actual film, and then it still looks digital. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, 2005.
But it looks, okay, but it was at least like a little bit more artistically shot. There's
lit,
more
right,
contrast, the way it was lit, etc. And honestly,
the lighting did a lot of the heavy lifting. To
well,
make this
also,
look cinematic,
and the other thing that we'll get into later is camera movement as well, which we'll touch on in a minute here. So,
or the lack thereof.
Yes.
I don't know what your take on it was, but this was a very static movie. That camera was on sticks a lot.
Yes and no. We'll get into that in a minute here. So, literally in a minute here. So that's why I'm going to move us forward. So the couple are watching this tape, right? And they want to know where it came from. We get to see the outside of their house on this surveillance footage that they're watching. So we realize now that they're being spied on or something to that effect, even if we're not 100% clear exactly what's going on. And so this is what I wanted to bring up is I think that for me, I think Haneke's pretty upfront with his filmmaking style, and he kind of doles out most of his sort of tricks or his motifs, so to say, within the first half hour. Now, you're saying that the movie was on sticks for a lot of the film. I suppose. It was. I suppose maybe that's true because it's probably true that most films are on sticks most of the time, right? I mean, if we're taking out your giant $200 million epics, right? Like it's an economical style of filmmaking, and especially with the films that we watch on this show, right? Like, what am I thinking of? Not that it was a great film, but Your Friends and Neighbors was a perfect example of that, right? Where it's just like, okay,
sure.
grab your wide shot, go in, get your close-ups.
We talked about that.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get your coverage.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So you say that, but this scene right here, okay, is absolutely not that because it starts. If it doesn't start in the living room, it starts in the kitchen, and it's a two-shot. I don't know. Actually, it does start in the living room, and then it follows George into the kitchen. It sets up like a two-shot of the two of them. They talk for a minute, and then I think George goes over to like a cabinet, and then it follows the two of them back outside, not outside, but outside of the kitchen into the dining room, and then it sets up like a two-shot, and it's this really long, like 5-minute take with a significant amount of dolly movement. Now, I won't say that we have a lot of instances of that throughout the course of the film, but A, they are there. And then that's also not to bring up the sort of, almost Kubrickian flat tracking dolly shots that he does, like outside the school, a little bit later, like when he's picked up and stuff.
I would add to that, Jason, that it's my take on it that was done intentionally, keeping the camera in place for a lot of the film, because you never quite know if you are, to your point a moment ago, you never quite know if you're watching surveillance tape, if it's a POV of someone hiding, if it's if you're in the moment itself and you're actually watching the scene play out from the cinematographer's, from the point of view of the camera in a mise-en-scene kind of way. So it's always keeping you on your back foot as far as what are they showing you, because this film, if nothing else, is elusive. It's very mysterious, enigmatic, and you end the film really not knowing, yeah, it's one of those films that leaves it up to the viewer to come to their own conclusions. And I'm really excited to get to that so that you and I could discuss what your take on it was versus mine. But my understanding of the cinematography was that it was static because, they kept the theme throughout the film is surveillance, spying. I mean, the name of the film is Cache, which in French means hidden. So, it's all about hiding and what are you hiding and what the truth is and so forth. So, I also want to, before we go much further, let you know that this was one of the rare instances I have had, and it's so special when this happens, where I knew nothing about this film. I had never seen a trailer for this film.
Same.
I had only seen the poster with the splash of red across it against the white gradient. And I went into this completely blind, which was one of those rare, fantastic movie experiences. So that gave a lot of enjoyment to me. But
definitely,
anyway.
even down to the fact that I'm sure for you now, like the cover and the poster hits a little differently.
Right.
After watching the film, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's got it. See what's going on there. We'll get to that in a little bit, of course. So now here's the thing, Ryan. I'm going to come out and say this right now, which is that this is actually a movie that I really want to watch again. Now, not necessarily immediately, but so full disclosure, been a crazy week. I just watched this film last night. I
watched it this morning.
So here's the thing. So I feel like this is a film where there are pieces of the puzzle here that I haven't necessarily pieced them together because I didn't have the time to really sit down and work through it yet. And maybe we'll end up doing that over the course of this episode, right? So
yeah, because I did a deep dive on this one.
Oh, did you? Okay, great. Because so that's going to be good because we're going to be able to work through that because I didn't have time to sit here and chew on it, but it's one of those things where, especially by way of reputation and by way of what's on the screen, it's like, okay, dude, this Michael Haneke guy very clearly knows how to make a film, very clearly knows what's up. Seems like he's not the guy to waste a frame or a shot. So I feel like a lot of these things that seem maybe a little out of sorts or appear superfluous on the surface are really not, and they're really sort of, Lynchian-like clues, if you will, to what's going on without just telling you what's going on through dialogue. I think it's like we looked at with Jonathan Glazer and Under the Skin. I do think that there's a lot of non-verbal communication that the filmmaker is trying to project. And I just didn't have enough time to sit down and put everything together. So it'll be fun to have that conversation with you. So one of the first things, for example, is like this next sequence and all of the other sequences of the kids swimming. And I feel like, it's either a metaphor or it's a direct hint as to, and I think that maybe when all is said and done, the kid had a certain level of involvement that maybe I didn't pick up on initially. But like I said, I haven't 100% worked through that, but it's just, there's a lot of things that appear to not make sense. And it's kind of one of those things like, when you're talking to someone who they're smarter than you are and they say something and you don't know what it means and you're like, that's on me. They know what they're talking about.
All the time on this podcast.
I don't know what they're talking about, but they know what they're talking about.
Happens all the time on this podcast when I talk to you, Jason.
So there was a lot of moments like that where it's like, that seems superfluous, so it's probably not, because, again, that's just the vibe I get from this guy, right? But again, I didn't necessarily, would have loved to have more time to work through it. But anyway, so, moving forward from there, we've got another sort of long nighttime surveillance shot. We learn quickly that George is this talk show host for this public access program. From what I can tell, it's a roundtable about literature that they have. And from there, he returns home. There's another tape. They watch it. We get a very quick shot at first of the paper that it was wrapped in, the video was wrapped in. And it's got this very sort of childlike image that we don't see super long. But we cut back to it after seeing some of the surveillance, and it's basically a childish drawing of a kid with, or a person anyways, with blood coming out of their mouth. And so it's not like it's a violent drawing. It's not inherently creepy, but in context of what it might mean and who it's coming from, it's definitely a little bit unsettling. So, and then, from there they go to the police station, but the police aren't willing to do anything for them because there's no active violent threats that have come about yet.
Yeah, it was good to know that the French have useless police officers as well. I was like, oh, okay, that's not just here in
Let
America.
us know
That's
after you die and we'll come help you out.
Yeah.
Limited resources. Sorry, what do you want to say?
Fill out form 32B629 and put it in the file over there.
Now,
Also, his literary talk show, I just want to get this in real quick, directly reminded me in aesthetics to World of the Psychic from Ghostbusters 2 with Peter Venkman.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely.
It looked exactly like that.
Well, I think there's like a PBS / public access aesthetic, right? And it's very consistent, and it always has that thing where it feels like it's being recorded in someone's basement, right?
Right.
on
From
like
Aurora,
on like
Illinois.
Betamax tape from 30 years ago.
Party on, Wayne.
It's like, we're in Wayne's basement, only that's not Wayne's basement. Isn't that weird?
Yep.
Now, Ryan, you touched on this earlier, okay? And I actually think the film, I kind of want to just get a little bit of clarity, a running theme of this film, right? But of your position on how it played with the digital. Because look, it was, again, sort of the, dawn of digital filmmaking, right? It didn't have the compatibility with the lenses and shit that you get today, right? So obviously everything looks a little bit differently. But I also think that, and I think you kind of touched on this, I think that it also sort of conceptually did a good job of leaning into that, right? Like, oh, okay, so we've got this digital technology. It's cheap, but it doesn't look so great. But hey, we can center this around surveillance technology, and so it'll give that effect. And I think that it did a really good job of sort of not biting off more than it could chew in that regard, and sort of finding a way to be like, okay, we have these limitations. Can we reverse engineer this thing in such a way that we can figure out a way to make it work, and I think they did that pretty effectively.
What was going on the screen too with the acting, and everybody sold the shit out of their roles, in my opinion.
Sure.
And so you just kind of adjust to it, and then if the director and actors and all the other department heads are doing their job, the medium stops mattering as much. Because sometimes, as much as that's, cinematography is kind of like salt, right? Like you always want to do some finishing salt. Salt on an entree is great, but if it's over salted, then that becomes in the front of it, and you don't get to really enjoy the dish itself. And so sometimes cinematography is so front forward in a filmmaker's decision making that it kind of takes away from, in some regards, the performances. And, a film can be too epic sometimes, you know, in my opinion. And so you're like watching all this beautiful, stellar shit, but you're not really paying attention as much because you're so taken by the cinematography. Anyway, this was not that. This was, again, leaned very heavily into the surveillance thing, and you never really... And, ultimately, I think this was it kind of made you feel like you were surveilling this situation as well. It put the viewer in that seat. So, Yeah,
I thought it did that really effectively. And look, and then, after that, for example, we do get what I referenced earlier, the really nice tracking shot where George picks up... His son's name is Perot, by the way. I may be butchering that pronunciation, but we'll call him Perot. And so he goes to pick him up at school, and then again we get that nice Kubrick tracking shot, right, where it starts and then it sort of goes down and watches him get in and comes back before it goes in for the close-ups inside the vehicle. And I thought that was a really nice shot.
So it was around this time in the film too, speaking of department heads and cinematography, that I happened to notice, man, this sound design is really forward. And then I was like, oh, that's because there's no music. Did you happen to notice there's not any score to this film?
Yeah, and I was thinking about it, and I was wondering if that's like a Michael Haneke signature, because I was thinking about Funny Games, and I remember having a very similar reaction to Funny Games, where there wasn't a lot of music, and when the kids would show up to the house, he just kind of let like the birds chirp outside, and Midsommar did that a little bit too, where it's like sort of playing against convention, right? Instead of like the Halloween, like or Nightmare Before Elm Street, whatever the hell it is, or just the low like right? It's just like, dude, just fucking be silent, man. Just let the fucking birds chirp, and that's it, right? That could be just as unsettling as anything else, because it creates this sense of normalcy, and then the threatening behavior juxtaposes that,
Right. Yeah, and being in France, they're all dressed to the nines always, and so anytime they're walking anywhere with no music or score behind them, and if they're not talking, especially, they're all wearing fancy shoes, and on those cobblestone streets, it sounds like horses. Like, it's crazy how front forward some of their walking and steps, even the subtleties of that just normally would go right on by. It was like, oh my god, dude, this Foley dude crushed it with the with the horse clomps. Picturing a couple of coconuts, like straight up Monty Python style. Sound booth.
Fantastic. Yeah, so, and then from there, so this is actually, I would say, where kind of the film changes its style a little bit, and we get a lot more. So it's this dinner party scene, and it's the one where the friend is sort of telling the story about his encounter with the woman, and she thought he looked like her dog, and it was this whole misunderstanding thing. But if you'll notice, so his entire story that he tells is probably 3 minutes, let's call it, right? And it's just a single,
yeah,
and it's just a single wide shot the whole time.
Yes,
the guy never cuts. And then after he tells the story, there's a ring at the doorbell, and then from there, everything goes to a series of singles where it's a bunch of individual close-ups, and then it's no longer showing the entire party together as one. And I think it's to sort of show the distrust, the element of mistrust that's introduced, because then he starts shooting all of them individually and cutting them together. So they go from being a collective whole to a series of individuals. I thought that was really effectively done.
That's great. Yeah. I think a lot of decisions were made cinematography-wise. If you can't use the camera you want, or if it doesn't exist yet, then you have to use the tools that are available to you. And this, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of intention was brought to the cinematography of this film. And that's a great pickup right there. I didn't really gather that. So I'm glad you brought that to my attention, that, they were once, that was the moment, right, that they started to break off and lies were being told and so forth. And so that was, from there on out, we're not together anymore.
Yeah. And we do see that, we're not exactly sure what's going on, but there's that whole little misunderstanding where the guy says that their friend Federico's working on a movie, and then it comes up a little bit later, and he's like, hey, how's the script? And he's like, what script? And he's like, for the movie. He's like, oh, right, yeah, I don't know. And it was just like, wait, so there's obviously some sort of, misdirection going on there. Again, another aspect that I would love to have been able to chew on longer or go back and rewatch and kind of make sense of. But yeah, so I think that whatever's going on kind of has to do with maybe this guy. What's his name? What is this guy's name? He's the one that she meets with later on. Is it Francois? Is that him?
Sure. Why not?
Jean? I don't know. Either way. It's the one that the kid basically thinks that she's having an affair with.
Correct.
So, yeah. And so I think he's involved to a degree. I think the kid's involved to some degree, but haven't, again, really worked through what all that means. Now, they get another video. So basically, the wife, Anne, has put it out there to the party guests what's going on. They're getting these calls. They're getting these videos. So George is like, well, cat's out of the bag. Let's go ahead and watch the video. And it ends up being of whoever is sending these videos going to the house that he grew up at, right? So there's some sort of potentially threatening insinuation that his parents might be targeted. So he goes to visit them the next day, though Dad isn't there. It's just the mom. She's living there with the caretaker. And she immediately knows that something's up. She's trying to ask him what's going on. And he's just like, oh, yeah, nothing. Don't worry about it, right? And there's also something that happens, too, that I believe is reflective of what we do know by the end of the film, okay? And that's basically what George did to this guy Majid that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so we get this close-up, and I wasn't really sure, well, it's a cutaway. I wasn't really sure what was going on at the moment, but I think it kind of makes sense later. And it's of this kid, and at first you think it's kind of a dream, and it does end up being a dream, but it's this kid cutting the head off of a chicken. And, we watch the whole thing happen, and the chicken kind of flutter around. And then he turns to another kid who's watching him, who's younger, who we can kind of tell is supposed to be George as a kid. And it kind of runs up and attacks him. And then George wakes up in that cold sweat from his dream. And this is basically, between that and then there's another shot that happens where, like, we get this quick push in, and it happens a little bit earlier. And it's where the kid is, like, bleeding from the mouth. And at first it's like, what the hell's going on? This seems so random. And then we find out that these are all sort of things that he did to this guy Majid as a kid. We'll go into that in just a moment here. So,
and it's worth noting too, I don't know if we pointed this out or not. If we already did, then I'll edit this out. But the video cassettes that he keeps being left at his doorstep, at his work, et cetera, are all wrapped in childlike drawings. And so far, I think we've seen a drawing of like a childlike crayon drawing of a stick figure with blood coming out of its mouth. Mm-hmm. We've also seen a chicken with blood on its neck pouring onto the ground.
Right.
So we see those first, and then now they're starting in this part of the film. It's starting to substantiate that with these flashbacks of sorts that we come to find out are flashbacks. But as they're showing to us, we don't know what the hell they are. They're kind of just these jarring graphic images. I also didn't quite understand the chicken thing. I saw the kid holding the chicken and the two kids, and then he lifts the axe, and I was like, oh, wait, what? And then the thing was literally running around like a chicken with its head cut off, which is very kind of disconcerting. I don't know how they did that, if they like digitally did that or what.
No, dude, that was totally real. That's just some shit where they have like different laws in France or something.
Okay.
They absolutely, there's no way that they got around that. Or it was like the chicken was going to be slaughtered anyways. So they're like, hey, you're going to kill the chicken. Can we just do it on film and have this guy do it and pay you some money? And they were like, sure.
Yeah, it was a little off-putting. Yeah, I don't know.
As I'm sure it was supposed to be.
Yeah, watching a literal chicken with its head cut off running around was a little off-putting. But yeah, like you said, as much as it should be. And we see the older kid that chops the one kid, the bigger kid that chops the chicken with his head cut off, approaching a smaller child. I think that's around this point in time as well, with like blood all over him and everything. Yeah, I've got things to say about all this stuff, but we'll wait till we get a little further down the line.
Okay, well, I think this is actually going to be a pretty good point to get into it, because our next scene is actually where we do get the reveal of the Majid character. And so George and his wife Anne are watching the video. They're able to determine what street something is. I believe it's Lennon Avenue. They can tell from freeze framing it. And so George also mentions that he thinks he knows what's going on. And that was actually a really interesting scene too. So he basically is like, hey, wife, I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, but I'm not going to tell you. Let me work through this. She's like, what do you mean you're not going to tell me? And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm going to find out first. And if it's cool, I'll let you know. And if not, and then she's like, well, why don't you just tell me what you think is going on? He's like, nah, I don't want to. And she's like, why not?
Yeah, how'd you think that was going to go over as a married man?
Right? Like, so here's the thing. First of all, like, just keep your fucking mouth shut first and foremost if you're not ready to bring it up, dude. Like, that's just life advice, right? Like, don't speak until you know for sure that, something is what it is, or, don't play your cards too quickly, don't tip your hand, whatever. But secondly, like, yeah, I mean, and the way that it does, speak to the nature of their relationship and how, based on this, it isn't a picture perfect marriage, and we don't need to go into all of the flashbacks and see what happened before. We can just sort of tell that there's this certain detachment, that occurs between the two of them. And basically you can tell that he's sort of a domineering sort, that she's asked to trust him all the time and he's never willing to do the same with her. She references that. And I thought it was a really effective way to bring in that element of sort of marital strife and relationship drama without going so heavy or modeling into it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah. So from there, though, George goes back. He ends up finding the apartment. The video shows a sort of dingy hallway. He's able to find that hallway, and he goes, buzzes the door. The person answers, and it's this kind of older guy. And immediately we can tell that the guy recognizes George, but that George doesn't recognize the guy. And it's a little bit unclear exactly what's going on there. And there's a lot of allusions sort of being made to the past. And George is like, you're sending these tapes, but the guy's in full denial. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about with the tapes. But at the same time, he still very clearly knows him. And so, for a couple minutes there, it does a really effective job of you're not really sure who's telling what the nature of everything is. And then it basically becomes revealed shortly thereafter that this guy was an orphan back in the day. So George's parents had basically, I don't believe they were full-on slaves. They were more like housekeepers, right? Yeah, so they had these housekeepers that were Algerian, and apparently there was a real life event in France in the 60s or something like that where they basically like slaughtered a bunch of Algerians. I believe it was a sort of a national, race sort of targeted thing. And so the two parents that were the housekeepers for George's family were among those people that got killed. The parents of George ended up feeling guilty, and so they went to adopt the child that these two the Algerian couple had, and it's this guy Majid. And George really wasn't pleased with that, right? Like, he got jealous. He didn't like having him around. He was an only child. He wanted things to stay that way. So he starts to make up lies about what this Majid kid is doing so that eventually the parents will get rid of him in some form or another, right? That's where all of this comes from. And so there's an element of guilt that George either does or doesn't have as it relates to that. And I believe that's kind of what a lot of the film is centered around. But basically, among the lies that he told were that he was bleeding from the mouth, the kid was, and then also that the family wanted the kid to cut the head off this chicken, which they really didn't. And so all those two things specifically are represented by the drawings that you just spoke of, as well as those tiny cutaway dream sequences that we saw.
Right. So real quick, just to chime in, the bleeding from the mouth and the cutting of the chicken to get blood on the child. So he told his parents, so he was jealous of this kid who all of a sudden was given preferential treatment when he was made to share a room. He was like 6 years old at the time.
Yes.
And so he's being a jealous kid. He sees this son of the caretakers being given preferential treatment based on what had happened to his parents. So his parents were drowned in the Seine River, which, like you said, is a real event that I had no idea about until this film.
Same.
I looked it up, and it was in 1961. I guess it was, there's a conflict between the French and the Algerians. There was this pro-Algerian protest that happened down in Paris, and the cops showed up and beat and killed a bunch of them, like hundreds of them. And so this kid's parents were amongst those. And all of a sudden now he's getting preferential treatment by the housekeepers, i.e. George's parents. So the kid is jealous, George. And so he lies and tells the kid that the parents want this chicken dead. He's a bad chicken. Kid kills the chicken, blood all over. Then he goes and tells his parents, this kid's coughing up blood. Look at him. There's blood all over him. And apparently that was due to a tuberculosis outbreak in France at the time. And with tuberculosis, you cough up blood. So then he's able to go back and say, look, see, he's covered in blood and blah, blah, blah. So they have to get rid of the kid because tuberculosis is highly contagious, I guess. So, yeah. So it's like, we got to get this kid out. So they send him to a hospital, and they're like, yeah, we don't want him back, and his parents are dead anyway. So it's like, just go ahead and put him in the foster care system, which is probably going to be what's best for him. So he gets the medical attention, and they're trying to protect their own family. They're like, yeah, he's dirty. So that all took Majid's life in a completely different direction, obviously, because he was going to be living this life of privilege as an adopted son of this rich family. And now he's in the foster care system and lost in the shuffle, all because George lied about the tuberculosis and to get rid of him.
Gotcha.
And, mission accomplished. Yeah. So anyway.
Cool. Yeah.
Learning a little bit of history here.
So Ryan, that's the whole crux of conflict where everything sort of stems from. And from there, we've got the moment where the wife's hanging out with that guy that the son thinks she's having the affair with, forget if it was Francois, whatever, and she returns home, but Perot, the son, he's not there, right? So now we've got a missing persons case, and George is able to get the cops to go with him back to the apartment of the Majid character. And except when they get there, Majid doesn't answer the door. It's this younger guy. Now, this was also an interesting moment because for a few minutes until we see them in the cop car later, I wasn't sure if it was like a bait and switch, right? If like somebody else was now living there and this Majid guy was gone, and they were trying to pull like a con. And that's really one of the things that I love about this film is it's like, we get really into, when I say we, I mean anybody that's watches films, right? Like we get into sort of what can we take about the film after the fact and really dissect it, right? So a film like 2001, you can write books on it. You can discuss it to death, right? And that's great. But there's also these sort of little mini moments within film that are highly effective, right? So those few minutes where we don't know, like, that's a masterful effect, right? Just the way that you certain play that. We can't really talk about it after the fact because we very quickly find out that it's not the case. But just the fact that they were able to like plant that seed for those few minutes, I think little moments like that tend to go underappreciated by, us and by the filmmaking community or the film watching community as a whole.
Right. No, this film constantly is pulling the rug out from under you, and to the very end. I mean, when the credits are rolling, you're still kind of like, huh. Yep. And one thing I found really interesting about this film that I wrote down in my notes around this time in the film is that it's really kind of murky as to what genre this film even is, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
Is it a thriller? Because it's not fast paced enough to be a thriller. The whole thing plays out very slow and methodical, but it's too much of a criminal whodunit, and there's all this death and back and forth and bait and switching to be a drama.
Sure.
It almost felt very Hitchcockian to me. Did you get any Hitchcock vibes? Like the way that Hitchcock would play out a thriller very slow and methodically, almost like North by Northwest or whatever. Now, granted, Hitchcock had a big dramatic score with, strings and horns and all this triumphant shit to kind of let you know when stuff was going down, where this one played out very silent. And I thought the lack of music, especially as these twists and turns were happening in the middle of the film, that's where I noticed the lack of music was most impactful, because normally in a film you would have these big swooping crescendos, or the lack of music would emphasize something that you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Music directs your attention and gives you emphasis and emotion in various ways that you may not realize is happening. Gives you a lot of subtext and kind of instructs how you're supposed to feel about a certain thing, or plays against type. But no music at all just leaves you naked there as the viewer to kind of figure it out on your own, right? Like, that was really kind of odd. It was an odd experience. This was a very odd watch. The whole thing. I was trying to figure out what is this, and is there going to be some big twist at the end? Is this a whodunit, or is this a drama where we find out something very sad happened and it's going to be this emotional turn wherein it's a husband and wife thing, because we're seeing a lot of the relationships develop and splinter around this time as well, like you said, with the son being missing, and then when we finally get the son back in the scenes ahead here in the next moments, and he's returned to the fold, and we find out supposedly he was just at a friend's house whose mother works as a night nurse.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't around to be able to report this, or didn't know that he was even over there. And so, then the son comes back and accuses the mother of cheating, like to what you were saying earlier with the Francois or whatever character. And I love that we call him Francois, as just like the only generic French name that.
No, I really think his name is Francois, but we've also just committed to that at this point. Like, his name could be Bill, and we're just like, nope, it's Francois for sure.
It's Francois. Look at that guy.
Based
that
on
got
nothing
Francois
other than
written
we
all
have
over his
said it
ass.
is.
I hope they do that in other countries too. They're like, we'll call him Steve. Like, oh, okay. He looks like a Steve.
John.
Look at that guy.
What's a generic white American name? Let's call him Mike. Let's get on with this.
Right. So anyways, I just thought that they did a great job of, like, I didn't really know what I was watching. Like, I didn't know how to feel about any of these things or what to expect. Is there going to be this big, crazy moment at the end, or is it just going to be subtle? Who fucking knows? Who still kind of knows?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of one of the things that, okay, so firstly, to answer your question, I honestly, I think I'm such a basic bitch when it comes to Hitchcock, dude. I think I've seen 2 of his films, which is funny because I've seen Psycho like 4 or 5 times. I really, really love Psycho. And other than that, I saw The Birds once and didn't care for it. And funny enough, that was actually with you. We watched it in film school way back in '03 or whatever the fuck it was.
Oh, that's right. We did watch The Birds in film
Yeah,
school.
because for our sound design concentration class, whatever.
Touché.
And yeah, I didn't dig it. Cool sound design, but not a great movie. Anyways, so when people describe things as being Hitchcockian, like cinematic confession, I don't know what that means because I haven't seen enough of his work, and I have a feeling that Psycho is maybe a little bit different than most of his other work, because it doesn't feel the way that people describe his work as being in general. Like, to me, like, Psycho moves, and it's It's got a good clip, and I don't know. So but I do see what you're saying. Here's the thing. So to me, when I was watching this, and this is, I think, sort of one of the interesting things about having so many foreign films that we look at, right? Which is that you notice that foreign cinema tends to be a lot less dramatic with the performances as well as the overall filmmaking, right? So one of the sort of hallmarks of a lot of American films, and especially when you look at your more mainstream fare, right, is it's the the Jerry Maguire ending, right? We talk about, right? Running through the rain to go see the girl at the end and loudly proclaim your love, and big swell of orchestra. And I mean, we've been doing that since the 40s, with all of the romantic comedies from back then, and the dramatic romances from back then, and the musicals. And so, we do things very big over here, and we expect there to be a freaking hell of a climax, right? But when we watch these other films, right, whether it's a Japanese film like High and Low, or whether it's this was interesting because this is a French film from an Austrian filmmaker who was born in Germany.
Yes.
So I think Haneke's pretty cultured. I think he's probably, speaks a few different languages. I've seen interviews with him both in French and German. So, I'm sure he's a smart dude. But yeah, so... And I think that in general, again, it's sort of like High and Low, if you remember, that just ended. There was no swelling crescendo. We found out who did it. He went to jail. Cops wrapped it up. And it was like, all right, cool. We're done. Peace out, y'all.
Yep.
And we left,
Yep.
Even going back to M in 1932 from Germany with Fritz Lang, once things get resolved, cool, it's over, it's done with. That does have a very dramatic third act with Peter Lorre, of course, but even just the final shot, they don't really do final shots the way we do final shots anywhere. Once the movie's over, they're like, cool, it's over, quick fade out and we're done. It's not they don't have some giant crane shot that always has to, go up into the sky and show the entire valley or nightscape or whatever to the soothing sounds of the Bee Gees or whatever the fuck, right?
Oh man, I was just thinking A Touch of Evil, and then I was like, wait, the Bee Gees are in Touch of Evil. Yeah, no, that must, now that you're bringing this up, historically speaking, that must have blown the Germans' mind at the end of World War II, and they were like, what? It's over. What are you still upset about? Hitler is dead? Movie's over. And they're like, no, we're going to build a wall, and we're taking your country. So dramatic. Americans, always so over dramatic.
It's how we do, man. It's how we do.
Yeah, right.
So the way that this movie just sort of ends, right? With that, it's a couple minute shot of the school and then the credits roll, and it starts that way. We've just got a couple minutes, or we've got the static shot of the apartment, and then, the opening credits just kind of pop up and go across the screen in a very non-sexy sort of business-like fashion. It's certainly not a, David Fincher or a Zack Snyder credit sequence. So
right. Again, no music.
Yeah, and lack of music. Yeah. So I thought it was, again, it's always interesting. I mean, for better or worse. And look, I do like the ambiguous endings, right? I love the Stanley Kubrick 2001. We're not going to give you everything, or the David Lynch endings, And doesn't mean I always love the film along the way in the case of David Lynch, but I do appreciate those endings.
We're not ending the film right now, are we?
No, we're not ending the film.
Oh, okay. You're talking about credits rolling. I'm like, you are leaving out a couple of huge chunks here.
No. Okay, so let's get back to the film here. So, first of all, again, when the kid does come back home, you described that he was dropped off by the mom, that's the nurse. He's really upset at his mom because he thinks she's having an affair. Now, the reason that I suspect this has something to do with what's going on is because that came out of nowhere for me. I was just like,
right.
What the, there's one quick scene of her having some coffee with him. And, he's maybe a little affectionate with her, but it's also France, right? We know there's physicality and touching, and there's not really social bubbles. So, I mean, all of that could just
kiss
be
each other goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it didn't seem anything beyond the way that's typically portrayed as just French people being, right? They're just affectionate people. And so it came out of nowhere, that allegation. And again, so it's okay, there must be something here, because where the hell did that even come from?
I know, just like Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus with you and Christmas, dude.
All just a
being French,
misunderstanding, man. All just
All
a
a big
misunderstanding.
misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's the thing. That was a French style sweater too. So.
That's true. Yeah.
But the so this well, I kind of refer to him as the adopted brother, even though he didn't really get adopted at the end of the day, or he was adopted, but it was a very brief period of time. So this guy Majid, so he ends up calling George back over, and he's like, "Hey, want to talk to you about something real quick." George is like, "Okay." So he comes over, and immediately, dude closes the door, whips out a razor, straight edge razor, and slits his own throat, and the ensuing gash splatters across the wall in a vertical fashion, and that ends up being the cover image. That's what that red gash is on that cover, is splash of blood from the guy slitting his own neck, and consequently why I said it hits a little differently.
Yeah, he says, I did not send those videotapes just to clear the air, and I wanted you to be here for this. And then we think there's going to be some revelation or some apology or some heartfelt backstory. And he just fucking whips out a razor and slits his throat instantly. Yeah. And it's like no hesitation. It's like, holy shit. There's like, and again, no music, no nothing. You're just left there in the silence of the moment with George to be like, now what? Because what do you do in that scenario? Like someone does that.
Well, I'll tell you,
like, do you let yourself out of the window? Like,
I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't do what George did, which is like go for a stroll and go see a movie without alerting to the cops to the fact that you were the last person seen with someone with a huge gash in their neck. Like,
well, no, it does come out later when he's talking to the son,
I know.
Majid's son, that he did talk to the cops and they cleared his story.
But only because his wife had to convince him. Because he goes and he talks to his wife in the next scene, and she's like, "What'd you do?" And he's like, "I went for a stroll." And she's like, "You know the cops are gonna think you did it, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess you're right now that you mention it. I should report that in." Come on, George. Let's go. Let's have a little bit of don't be dumb horror guy here. Come on.
This guy has never listened to a true crime podcast
exactly,
in his life.
Right? Come on, man. They're just that's what they're hoping you would do. Whoever's setting you up, that's exactly what they want you to do, bro. Same way you were yelling at your wife that's exactly what they wanted her to do.
Who do you think you are, Carol Baskins? Come on, get your shit together.
Dude, you know what sucks is like I have you know how you had to bullshit your way through all those Kurosawa conversations because you had never seen any of his movies? I have to do the same thing with Tiger King. I've literally never seen like 30 seconds of Tiger King. I literally don't even, I think I know the name Joe Exotic and the name Carol Baskins, and I think people think she killed him, but she got away with it. Is that the general gist of it?
Joe Exotic is still alive. He's in prison for doing craziness. Carol Baskins
she kill?
Allegedly, what's that?
Didn't she like kill someone and people think she should be in prison?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
Hang on. I'm getting there.
Let's go already.
Take it easy. So,
oh man, dude, they should have totally cast you
killed
for
her
Mario.
husband and
Fuck
put him
Chris
in a meat
Pratt.
grinder.
You've got Mario, dude.
What?
I said they should have never cast Chris Pratt. You've got the Mario Italian plumber down. Whatever that was you just did.
It's me, Carol Baskins. Supposedly Carol Baskins, who, by the way, runs Big Cat Rescue no more than 5 miles from my house currently. I think that came up in season 1 of Esoterica Cinema. Big Cat Rescue is right here in Old Tampa, Florida. Gotta love Florida. So
Big Cat Rescue sounds like the name of a Ted Nugent album, by the way.
Big Cat Rescue is a Ted Nugent album. It's great, yes. The ultimate stranglehold. Yeah, so Big Cat Rescue is a Big Cat Rescue place here that was all about. Yeah, I know. It's this thing they do. And so, yeah, she apparently killed and fed her husband to the cats.
Oh, dude, that's a tale as old as time, man. I mean, come on.
Who hasn't done that?
No, I'm not
Says the guy
joking,
with 2
dude.
cats.
I mean, dude, fucking, what's the movie with the musical and the story and the guy who makes people into pies and shit?
Was it the Demon Barber of Fleet Street?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah. And then, I feel like you go back in like, folklore history or whatever, and there's totally like tales of, people who used like human meat, like the whatever that story The Simpsons played off of, where the gym teacher uses the human meat and feeds it to the kids. Wasn't that like even like a Twilight Zone or some shit back in the day?
I mean, they're Soylent Green as people.
Tale as old as time, sir.
Or as old as Charlton Heston, at least.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
So the wife convinces him, he goes, he calls it in, blah, blah, blah. They're not really suspicious of him at all or anything like that. So from there, and Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the younger guy that was in Majid's apartment was Majid's child. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So he basically...
That's his son.
Yeah. And so he kind of like wants to...
Who George is now convinced is doing all of this. Because the camera angles...
Now the other guy's dead, right? So who else could it be?
Right. And there was a videotape that George was sent literally from inside Majid's apartment.
Yeah. Got him in trouble with the missus. He was giving her the fib, said, I went to go check it out. There was nobody there. Hours later, a tape shows up of him having a conversation with that person.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So there were things that were going on that were just, there were too many fingers pointed at Majid at this point. And so he's convinced that it was Majid, but then Majid swears it wasn't him. Then it's like, well, then it's got to be his son who is mad at me for condemning his family. I'm certain that the dad, Majid, told the son, like, this man pretty much fucked up our life trajectory and you had all this potential that was robbed from you by this man and his stories at 6 years old who damned me to orphanage and poverty. So, and now he's on the television living his best life. So, now they think it's the son because shit's still kind of going awry and he's like, confronting, there's this back and forth with the son, Majid's son, who, by the way, remains nameless throughout the film, intentionally so.
Interesting.
Who's to say?
Well, and this is what's really interesting is because this is really about the third act of this film, and in terms of a traditional 3-act structure, it is not the feel of a third act where everything's sort of coming together. As a matter of fact, the filmmaker's really content to sort of let everything feel as though it's not wrapped up, even though it may be the case that there's enough pieces of this puzzle there to really understand what's going on. So when I finished this film, like with just going along for the ride and not taking any beats afterwards to reflect, like I didn't know who did it when all was said and done. I still don't know who did it. I don't even know if that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, around this time, I have in my notes, I hope it's a chicken. I hope the plot reveal is that it's a chicken's revenge. It's the brother or a distant relative.
What I was gonna say.
From the chicken who got beheaded, and we're gonna see the camera spin around, and there's a scared chicken in the corner, in that exact same scene, watching these two kids play out, and there's a Cain and Abel thing that's going on between these two children throughout their lives, and meanwhile, it's like the mean chicken fight from Family Guy, where we like do a slow push in, and the chicken squints its eyes really low,
Dude, I'm almost sort of getting like Malignant the Chicken version vibes here too, for anybody that's seen that one. Which, go back and check it out if you haven't. Great film. I know it came out a few months ago, but mwah. Brilliant.
It's on my docket. I haven't gotten there yet.
But so because from here, so now like George basically, he presses the kid, Majid's kid, to tell him that he's doing the videos. He says he's not. And he basically just goes back home and takes a couple sleeping pills and he's like, hey, this has been one hell of an ordeal.
What a day, right?
Yeah. Am I right? I'm gonna go to bed. Call the wife, let her know. Hey, I took a couple sleeping pills. If I'm not, if I don't wake up right away when you get home, that's why. Peace out. And then from there we get the shot of, and I assume this is another dream. It's of the kid basically being taken away from the house as a youth, right? Majid as a 6-year-old, being taken away. Which I actually would have thought would have been a fine final shot to go out on. But then that's not the final shot, because the actual final shot then goes to a static shot of the exterior of the school. And it hangs there for a solid 90 to 120 seconds without anything happening. And then credits roll. And so, again, I feel like there's some sort of puzzle piece here going on, and
you missed it. I know,
I 100% missed it. Yeah, that's
all right. You ready for the significance of this?
All right, dude, blow my mind here. What do we got?
Majid's son literally walks into frame from the right side of frame and walks up the stairs and meets with Piro, and they walk down the steps right in front of camera against that guardrail, and they have a total exchange. And they're laughing and having fun. They kind of dab it up. and then Majit's son pieces out, and then Pierrot goes back up the stairs to join his friends, and then they walk off together.
Interesting.
So
yeah, no, I totally missed that. And and it's funny too, because I was watching, because like there's someone hanging out in the middle of the frame, and
that looks like 3 raccoons in a trench coat. Yeah.
And that must have been a misdirection, dude, because that's who I was watching,
misdirection.
and that's who I was waiting to
Yes.
see. And then I even watched through the credits, and then at the very end, he like turns around, just picks up his kid and walks away, and I was like, God damn it, you got me, Haneke.
No, I mean, he looks like Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther cartoons or something. Like he's wearing that trademark French khaki trench coat. And,
exactly.
And then there's a woman in khaki to the right of him as well. And they're wearing the exact same colored coat, and their color scheme of their clothes are lighter when everyone else is very dark. And it's again to their backs are facing camera, so your eyes are drawn to them in some way. Where,
interesting.
And then it wasn't, as I was watching the woman, I thought I saw Majit's son, and I followed. I was like, oh, wait a minute, and then I saw him talk to Pierrot. I was like, oh, fucking, there's the thing with the stuff. I got it. Nailed him.
Okay, so let's consider this for a minute, Ryan.
Okay.
Because obviously, you had time to recognize this and sort of acknowledge it and everything. So give me your just high level, like, what basically. So it seems clear that he's saying that like these 2 kids were responsible for everything. So for if that's the case,
or the chicken, yeah. Mm-hmm.
If that's the case,
I'm sticking with this.
If that's the case, what we need is the why. So I'd like your insight on that.
Well, yeah, I think it's my take on it. Again, it was left ambiguous. There's no answer. I looked it up online. Nobody has a clue. Haneke or Haneke, whatever, hasn't said one way or another. It's one of those left up to you scenarios. But it's my take on it that Majit's kid basically was guilty of everything that was kind of dribbled out to us, that he is mad at this family, and then he leveraged Pierrot's animosity towards his parents, because throughout the entire film, something that I wasn't picking up on until the end, and then when I saw the 2 of them meet on the stairs, I went back and kind of did a bit of a deep dive to pull this apart to see where I was at in the whole thing. And one thing I did not notice or really pick up on, I mean, I did, but not as much as I probably should have, is how neglected Pierrot was throughout the entire film. So we are with Georges and Anne the entire film, and so much focus is put on their strained relationship and the tapes that are being left and the hobnobbing that they're doing with friends at dinners and all of that. And then there's all these little offhanded remarks like, oh, where's Pierrot? Or did you get the kid? No one's like, fuck that kid. Fuck them kids. And no one really cares about this kid except for that. I think at one point he's at a swim meet or something that they're, picking him up from or there to support. But 90% of the movie, we're left thinking that the kid isn't really a main character, and that's why we're not seeing him in these scenes. But in hindsight, looking back, I think he's just a neglected kid amongst aristocrats. And so I think Majit's kid and Pierrot, George and Anne's kid, kind of bonded over this thing. And then when Pierrot goes missing, was he really at that nurse's house, or was that just his alibi stating that basically, because the nurse couldn't corroborate the story, she was like, I was at work, at the hospital until 7 a.m.
Here's the other thing too. I'll even throw this out there. How do we know that wasn't complete bullshit? How do we know she's a nurse? How do we know she's this chick's mom or this dude's mom? We don't.
I mean, that's fair. One thing I will say is like the camera angles that we see on these surveillance tapes that are left for George and Anne throughout the film, as I kind of mentioned earlier, they were from such point of views that really it lends itself very well that Majit's kid and Pierrot, George and Anne's kid, would be the ones doing all this surveilling, because they would have the most access. They would know the times that these things would play out.
It makes perfect sense, like from a
logical I think
standpoint.
They tag teamed it to exact some plot of revenge or act out in some way, shape, or form. They're both victims of circumstance that stem back to George and Anne and their prioritizing of their lifestyle, so to speak.
Well, and the other thing too is, and this is, just spitballing. I don't know if there's anything in the film that suggests this, and you can let me know if there is. But we also don't know Pierrot's character from the standpoint of perhaps this is not dissimilar from a previous episode, Hard Candy. Maybe some sort of metering out of justice. right? Like maybe he found out through whatever set of circumstances. Maybe Majid's kid reached out to him, or maybe when all of this went down, well, no, it would have been before that. But yeah, maybe Majid's kid reached out to him and sort of told him about these things his dad did, and he was like, that's fucked up. We're going to teach him a lesson. It doesn't really go into his motivations, but these are a couple, I suppose, reasons that there could be for it.
Well, and at the end of the day, Pierrot was, what do you say, Jason, like 13, 14 years old-ish?
13, yeah.
Yeah. So at that age, motivation is, you really just need to light the fuse and let it go because, you don't need anything too methodical. Sometimes you just act out of emotion without rationale or reason.
No, there's got to be. I mean, there's that's a strained relationship. I mean, maybe there wasn't a single incident that broke the camel's back, right? But if you have any sort of relationship,
I'm not saying the fuse wasn't lit, that there wasn't a motivating factor, but I think the neglect. I think that, like you said, once Majid told him what his father is capable of or what he did, I think that. Once you set that in motion, you've hit the first domino, and I think Pierrot would have taken that and run with it to a certain degree, whether it's acting out for attention or any number of things. I mean, you see this with, high school shooters, school shootings or any kind of, violence from children.
Yeah.
Children are capable of some devious and evil things.
Oh, for sure.
And so, and sometimes with only the mildest of motivations, sometimes they're just set down a certain path and things build upon themselves. They're getting over their head and they commit to it. And so I think this is kind of one of those moments perhaps. And Majid was kind of puppeteering the whole thing as an older mentor of sorts, where a kid like that would look up to someone about Majid's son's age.
Yeah, that's true.
You see it again on the steps. If you go back and watch that scene, the difference in age doesn't seem so apparent at that point. And Majid's son in that scene, if you go back and watch it on the school steps, looks younger. And it's almost my take that is a precursing scene. Like that's the prequel. Like that's how the whole thing started, not ended. I think we ended.
Or it could be
beginning.
both. It could be like an Ouroboros thing, right? Like that, because that's totally how that would begin and end, is with like a fist bump in exchange, right?
But Majid's son looks a little younger. He's dressed down younger. Everything. He's not dressed as mature. So I almost wonder if that's the moment they met and then bonded in some way, shape, or form, and then everything transpired from there. And then we pick up at the beginning of the film where these tapes are starting to be left behind by both of them working in conjunction with each other to document. And also, it would lend itself well to, because how do we know Julia Binoche's character, Anne, isn't committing adultery? She states she's not. They're obviously very French friendly, as you stated earlier, which has a different standard. But at the same time, if he's out surveilling and hiding cameras and snooping and spying, maybe he knows something that he's not leading on. And maybe he's seen them having an affair. Maybe he's filmed them in certain ways. Maybe he's seen the betrayal that is deeper than we're led to believe as the viewer, to keep things, keep the animosity alive or the mystery alive within the film. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you could even, there's, because it's kind of left unclear, you can go a number of ways with it. I mean, maybe he was even trying to, maybe all of this was an initiative to catch his mom in the act, right? And then he accidentally stumbled across this stuff that his dad did. And now it's like, oh shit, well, this is where we are now, right? And then maybe he still caught some stuff.
Cross paths.
Yeah, maybe he still caught some stuff with his mom along the way, and that's why he knows, and that's why he's treating her the way that he is. But it's no longer the primary goal, right? I'm onto this other thing, but I still know what's up, so fuck you for that. But like, my efforts are going over here now. There's a lot.
So this has been our review of Sex, Lies, and Videotape by Steven Soderbergh.
Which, by the way, is still his best film, and he's made like 36 other films since, and I just think that's tragic.
Never seen it.
It's good. It's really good.
It is. Cinematic Convention. I've never seen it. It's hard to watch. I mean, like, when I say hard to watch, I mean, I don't know that it's available to stream anywhere.
Oh. I don't know. I remember I watched it like way back in the day. That was like one of the of the first like red envelope Netflixes that I got was that movie. I remember, but
because I love David Spader. That's David Spader, right?
James Spader, yeah.
James Spader. Yep, I'm terrible with names.
There's David Spade and there's James Spader, and Ryan, I'm here to tell you they're very different people. Okay.
Oh man, yep.
James Spader comes out as Joe Dirt. Just not even playing character, just like, fuck you.
I would love to see David Spade playing Ultron in the MCU. That'd be fantastic.
It would have made for such a better movie. Hey guys, how y'all doing? Yeah, I'm gonna take over the world. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, this has been Cash, aka Hidden, and I think it was an interesting one to discuss. I'm glad it was the type of film that, you know, again, we talk about certain films, like I didn't think last week's The Brood really lent itself to as stimulating a conversation, but, you know, when films are left kind of a little open and ambiguous like this, it gives us a lot to chew on and talk about, and I always think it makes for great conversation. So this was a good one, man. I enjoyed it. So
Agreed.
Let's go ahead and wrap things up as we do. We've got 3 adjectives. Ryan, what you got?
My first is mysterious, and I mean this on a few different levels. Mysterious with the plot, obviously, that's the most obvious use of the word, but also genre. Like, you know, I still to this day don't really know. I mean, it's kind of a whodunit, I guess. Thriller, not so much. Drama, definitely. There's a lot of layers.
By the way, real quick, Ryan, before you continue,
Go ahead.
I just have to put this out because, so I'm a big Letterboxd fan. I know you're not on Letterboxd, and I don't know how many of our listeners are, but I love Letterboxd, and I love going in and logging my my films there. So I went last night to log in. And I try not to read any of the opinions or anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to steal people's insights or anything like that. But it was funny that you talked about how it's being sort of genreless, because the one comment that I did have, it was like one of my friends' reviews, and it was just simply, Michael Haneke said, fuck your genre. And so the couple times you've mentioned that, like, I literally just keep hearing that line in my head. Michael Haneke says, fuck your genre.
I mean, yeah, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. I picked up on that too. And also mysterious as to my interest level, because I was kind of in and out of this film. There was a lot of just because, again, no music to carry it. A lot of, impatient silences, pregnant pauses, the whole bit. And so ultimately, I did enjoy the film. I love the way it buttoned itself up at the end, or the lack thereof. I love an ambiguous ending like we talked about. So I think I'm going to be a little more generous with my grade than you may be anticipating. The next word I would use is a little hyphenated conjunction thing, and that's slow burn. And that kind of ties directly into what I was just saying, which is you just got to stick with this one. And because it's methodical, it's not fast paced. You just got to kind of follow along and lean into the acting and the emotions and the things that are happening on screen, because it is a very slow burn. And my last one kind of rolls right off of that as well, and that's still. No music, very little camera movement. There are, some transitional scenes like you're talking about, but a lot of it is surveillance, POV, the proscenium view, big wide shots, everything's kind of happening within these boundaries. So, and then, the acting is even still sometimes, where you just have people sitting there in silence, and you're just, that the awkward tension that's building in the room because nothing is happening. That can sometimes be more tense than like what you're talking about, where someone's flying off the handle and going full banana pants crazy like Charlton Heston in Soylent Green. So, sometimes two people just sitting there in silence is just, and because you're there with them, whether you like it or not, and you're like, can I go now? And you're like, oh wait, I paid to watch this. So mysterious, slow burn, and still. Jason, how about you, buddy?
That's great, dude. So my first one is subtle. I just really liked the subtle approach that the filmmaker took with this film. Doesn't beat you over the head with anything. You've pointed out the lack of a score. The acting was not showy at all. There's no big dramatic moments, no big giant reveals. Juliette Binoche arguably has one, maybe two scenes that kind of border on that, where she does kind of really get into her frustrations with him. But even
she's one of my celebrity crushes, by the way.
Yeah,
I love me some Juliette Binoche.
Lovely woman, great actress. No reason not to love Juliette Binoche. I honestly, I don't. This very well could have been the first film that I've seen her in. I never saw Chocolat, which I believe most people would probably know her from.
Chocolat. I think she was in An English Patient too, if I'm not mistaken.
You saw that movie? You saw The English Patient?
I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. That is not a film that I would have expected you to see. I have not seen that movie.
I think that was one of those when I worked at Blockbuster and you could take home any movie you wanted. So it was free and it was like, fuck it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think she was...
Dude, like, as if you haven't seen some bullshit films streaming just because they were there in front of you and you're really ripped one day and you're like, let's give this one a whirl.
I actually do not stream, sir. I am a proud subscriber of old school red envelope Netflix. I receive my physical media in the mail as I am heating my house by way of wood-burning stove.
Fucking hipster DVDs. I love it.
Okay, but dude, I'm telling you, you can't imagine how many more films are available on that platform that you cannot get anywhere else. And here's the thing, Ryan. Here's the thing, man. If I haven't done it before, I live a proactive cinematic lifestyle, okay? When I'm watching a movie, it is because I have decided that it is a film that I want to watch, and I have gone out and I have seeked it and I have watched it. I'm not sitting here only watching what you're willing to serve me up, Netflix or Hulu, which is surprisingly limited when you want to do anything that was released before 2009. Okay? I like old movies and shit.
I mean, I'm not... Yeah. You make a strikingly good point in your man bun and mustache sipping your latte. Good sir.
Hold on here. Let me finish oiling my beard. Yeah, no, I do not have a beard, by the way. The only time I have a beard is because it's been 2 weeks since I've shaved and I'm just lazy. But I do have the curly Q mustache. I'm working on a nice Wario. I'm trying to crinkle cut it. I'm going to call it the crinkle fry. The Wario crinkle fry. Anyways, so, yeah, subtle. I don't know how we got, we're in 3 adjectives? That was a 3 adjectives tangent? Holy shit. That's more of a film review tangent.
It was a good one.
Okay, all right.
It was a good one.
Let's move on to number 2. Skillful. And like I said, I think there was a lot on display where Haneke was one step ahead of us as an audience. And I mean, we're pretty sophisticated audiences too. I'm not trying to blow smoke up our own ass, but like we get films, we understand what filmmakers are doing. We see things that maybe not the average moviegoer would see. And that being said, he got a number on old Jason over here anyway, especially with that last scene. So... And then, yeah, like I said, I've broken down sort of the going from, the wide shot to the individuals, utilizing the digital cinematography and having that play into the overall story and the aesthetics. So really skillful film. And then funny thing, Ryan, I had the exact same third adjective as you, but I had a feeling there was a case that a scenario where you went with slow burn. So just to hedge my bets, I went with slowly engrossing, which is cheating the system, saying the same thing in a different way. Right. So since it's already been said, I don't need to break that one down. But subtle, skillful, and slowly engrossing, giving us that juicy alliteration we always love to have. And that brings us to our formal rating. I do the star ratings. Ryan does the grade ratings. Ryan, give us a formal grade rating for Cash.
I gave this one a B-.
Nice. I was interested to see because... Yeah, I honestly did expect you to like this one less than you did because for me, I actually got heavy Lives of Others vibes from this film.
I mean, from the filmmaking standpoint, yes, but not the content.
Okay.
I thought the content was way better and way more enjoyable. Dude, those people were just hard to watch. That Lives of Others shit and the writing and the diatribes and everything that was going on. That was rough. This was a completely different thing. You had murder and intrigue and whodunit and back and forth and the rug being pulled out and what am I supposed to be paying attention to? It drew me in.
Okay, cool.
Was it the best version of that? No. Was it solid though? Yeah. And the way it started, again, with no music, the digital shit that we talked about, you don't really know what's going on. Everything, you're getting these videotapes and the crayon drawings they're wrapped in, and you're just like, huh. But as it went on from about the second act, in through the third act, I really, again, it's a slow burn, and as you get through a slow burn, it burns hotter, and I really enjoyed these moments. So this felt like, so I was kind of debating on what to give this, and when you're talking about a B-, you're at that 80, 81%. If you took a test and you weren't sure how you did on it and the teacher comes back and hands it to you, it's like 81%, you're like, okay, I'll take that. I'll accept that. And that's how this movie left me, was like, okay, I'll accept this film. This film is okay. It's a B-
It
film.
passes Ryan's judgment. I have
Right,
deemed
yes.
this film worthy.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome, dude. Yeah. So for me, I little bit better, higher score than you. Not super far off. 4.25 out of 5 stars. And
Okay,
yeah, for
a
me it
little
was
higher, a
more
little higher.
Yeah. It's kind of on the B plus range.
B
as
plus,
opposed to
A
the
minus range. Yeah.
So but yeah, and for all the reasons that we discussed, really, and again, I don't want to watch this film again tomorrow, but I am looking forward to rewatching this film sometime over the next, couple of years or whatever. And I think that I'm going to be able to use this conversation and a lot of what we've observed and sort of piece together and see everything that we talked about, while I'm watching it, as opposed to having to reflect on it a second time around. So that has been Cash. Ryan, we got some social media accounts. And listeners, if you're not following them, you should be. First is that we are on the Twitter at Esoterica Cinema, and we are also on the Instagram at Esoterica Cinema. Both Ryan and myself are on both of those as well. Ryan is at the Ryan Siebold and Ryan_Siebold on Instagram. Is that correct?
That's correct. On Twitter and Instagram, respectively.
Sweet, finally got it. And for me, I am Jason Aberrant on both. That's 1B and 2 R's. So go ahead and hit us up. As always, we love to hear from you. We've also got the old school email for anybody who's enjoying a nice crepe and wants to let us know about it. You can hit us up, esotericacinema@gmail.com, with all of your crepe and crepe-related correspondence. You can also discuss muffins if you want to take it back to season 1. Or
I was going to ask if it was crepe because we just watched a French film and that's the French muffin, maybe. So,
So it's kind of the French pancake, really. I don't know. I guess that would be croissant. I don't know that there is a French muffin.
Yeah.
I mean, I know cupcakes are big over there, but we've discussed the cupcake versus muffin differential here before.
We have. Either way, if you're out there and you're French, let us know your opinions.
Absolutely.
Email at esoterica@gmail.com.
It's you know what? Cinema? Go figure. I was gonna say it's a tricky one. It's esotericacinema@gmail.com.
There it is.
And then we've also got the website. So you go there. You go to esotericacinema.com. esotericacinema.com, brought to you by Sports Center. And then we've got a bunch of cool stuff for you to check out there. So we've got the web player. We've got links to our awesome animatic for Flippers Gentlemen's Club. That one's always fun. And the trailer. And, of course, our master list, our season 2 master list from which we choose all of our films. It's a beautiful list, and we're looking for you guys not only to play along at home when we pull the films here at the end of the episode, but also, these films are all coming off for season 3, and we're going to need some new movies to replace those with. So, again, hit us up at any of the forums that we just mentioned, and feel free to suggest some films that you would like for us to put on next season's master list. And who knows, maybe we'll pull it, and we'll get to discuss that film that you love so much, and hopefully bring it to some people's attention. So, yeah. Oh, other thing, too, if you're listening and you haven't, please do give us the old subscribe or follow. And also do leave us a review on Apple or Podchaser or wherever you leave your reviews. It does help us. We really appreciate it. Those subs help us get our numbers up as well, so we appreciate that. And, of course, we appreciate you listening. At the end of the day, sub, like, whatever. But if you're listening to us right now, we appreciate you. Everything else is just gravy. So thanks a lot. We've got some really awesome numbers that we're looking forward to continuing to increase this season. And with that being said, Ryan, I believe it's time to go ahead and pull our next film.
Absolutely. Let's see how my week's going to go.
All right. So the first thing we got to do, we got to go to our random.org true number generator.
I hope they become our first sponsor. I hope Random...
I don't know that they make any money, dude. They don't sell a single thing on this site. I mean, like, this is just some bored programmer, right? Like, he's like on staff on Microsoft. He's one of a billion. And he just sits there and he's like, fuck that. My true passion is in random number generation. But anyways, so we've got 200 films. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pull it up. So anybody playing at home, you should know that we just pulled number 134. So we're going to give those people that have printed out their list or have it on their phones I'm in it to check it out. Number 134. Ryan, this is going to be an interesting one. I think this is literally the only type of this film that we have on this list. I think that most people are probably familiar with this, not because of the movie itself, but because of esteemed hip-hop supergroup, the Wu-Tang Clan. That's right. We are watching the 36th Chamber of Shaolin.
Oh, sweet. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, I mean, all of our other samurai films are like Harakiri and Kurosawa films where they're more like meditations on life and honor. And like, I think this is just a balls to the wall samurai film.
I'm in.
You got a description for us?
I do. From 1979, Google has this listed as young student Liu is urged to rise against the Manchu oppression in China, but the revolution has disastrous consequences. Escaping from the massacre, Liu seeks shelter in the Shaolin Temple, where the monks train him in their famous martial arts skills.
Excellent, man. Yeah, so I think that's going to be a fun one. Like I said, don't really have a ton of these, just kind of old school samurai films on here, so very glad we got to pull this one. Keep it fresh, keep it interesting, and yeah, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm expecting this one to be a little different from Harakiri that we watched the other day.
Absolutely. Or Grave of the Fireflies,
Absolutely. So everybody, thanks so much for joining us here for another episode of Esoterica Cinema. We will be back next week. In the meantime, enjoy a fake commercial. Intruso Whole Home Convenience and Security. How may I improve your well-being?
Help! Someone's trying to break into my property!
I'm with the gas company. I just need to read the meter.
Please, come quick. He smells like an immigrant.
I've told you 3 times. I'm from San Diego. Don't worry, ma'am. Intruso is on the way.
When it comes to protecting your interests, nobody does it better than Intruso.
I thought about using Ring, but they only put a single camera outside your front door. What happens once the burglars are in my home?
With Intruso's deluxe package, we'll install cameras along both the outside and inside perimeters of your house, ensuring every square inch is observable by our team of experienced professionals.
Honey, have you seen the blue cheese dressing? Hello? This is Intruso. How may I improve your well-being? I'm good, actually. I was just looking for salad dressing. Yes, the blue cheese, we heard. It's on the 3rd shelf behind the kale and the leftover beef Wellington. This is kind of intrusive. Thank you, sir. We try hard to live up to our namesake.
Intruso isn't just a name, it's a way of life. As a Fortune 500 company, we're committed to being all up in your shit at all times.
I don't know. I feel like the passion is gone from our lives. Jim, what happened? We used to be so compatible.
Oh, come on now. Hello? This is Intruso. How may I improve your well-being? Okay, now seriously, this is way too much, okay? My wife and I are having a private conversation. Yes, we heard. Betty is feeling neglected because you don't reciprocate oral sex. Oh, come on!
No, Jim. Intruso's right. Intruso's always right.
Really?
Really.
Well, I'll be. Thanks, Intruso. Just doing our job, sir.
Intruso, we get up in your shit